He was assaulted on the main street, Mullingar. He's 13 years of age. He ended up in hospital twice over the instance. He's left scarred on his face. I, as a mother, have been very frustrated by it. All you want to do is protect your kids. I've always said you can rear your own children, but you're not responsible for rearing everybody else's.
This Mullingar mother wishes to stay anonymous for the safety of her son. He was assaulted outside the town park on a Wednesday afternoon earlier this year by a teenage gang, and daily life has changed subsequently since.
I am not naive. I know kids can go out and get smacks, but it's the level that these children are doing at Mullingar that shocks me. I have to collect my child from school every day. He should be able to walk home. Mullingar seemingly has a purple flag, but it's not very safe at the moment, and it's not just children.
She believes this bullying all comes down to parenting and feels the justice system has let us down.
I don't know what will solve the problem, but at the end of the day, you bring children into the world to rear them and guide them. These children haven't got any guidance. As far as I can see, the law's in their favour, which is so wrong. If Frances Fitzgerald was here today, she'd have got a piece of my mind, I can tell you. The whole justice system in this country has to change.
Councillor Andrew Duncan took matters into his own hands by organising a public meeting for the people of Mullingar to tackle the ongoing issue.
I'd been contacted originally about 4 or 5 months ago by a parent whose child had been assaulted by a gang and told me that this gang were very active in the town and intimidating all the younger kids. So I spoke to the superintendent about it and they said they'd look into it. Did give it a huge amount of further thought until the election came along and we were canvassing, and it became a regular feature on the doors that there was a gang intimidating kids around the McDonald's and Town Park area. So I put a post up on Facebook and was a bit overwhelmed with the response. So that's led to this particular meeting. One of the main reasons was to give parents and people affected a forum to be able to discuss it so that they could understand that they weren't on their own. There was the one overwhelming thing that kept coming back to me was that most people thought that this was an isolated one-off and they were the victims, but they were afraid to actually report it. So it was just to give them a forum to make them realise they weren't on their own, and then maybe try and figure out how we're going to solve it, because it's not something we can allow to continue.
So what age groups are being affected?
This is a small number of half a dozen, maybe a dozen at most, who are giving all the teenagers a bad name, and the bulk of the people they're intimidating are the teenagers. So half of the people that contacted me on Facebook were teenagers that had been either intimidated or insulted by this small number of people. So the age group, I suppose, is somewhere between 14 to 17, somewhere in that age group, I guess, you know.
Is it this one gang that's committing all these?
There's a hardcore of a gang with 4 or 5 or 6 in it, and then there's maybe another half a dozen or maybe 10 on the fringe. But yeah, it is. It's one particular gang that are causing the vast majority of the problems, yeah, for sure.
And what's the level of antisocial activity or bullying that's been taking place?
The businesses down there, I've spoken to the manager of 2 businesses down there, and they're in the vicinity of the town park and the McDonald's area, and they're regularly shoplifting. But they said the most distressing thing really for them was that they had kids coming in, running into the shop to get to the security guys so that they wouldn't be beaten up by this gang outside. You have a town skate park there now that is practically unusable by the majority of kids because these guys have just taken it over. So it's becoming a bigger and bigger issue that needs to be addressed before it gets absolutely out of hand.
Superintendent was here this evening.
He was.
Garda response has been over.
It's rare you can get access to a superintendent. The superintendent in Mullingar here has always been free with his time. He's extremely proactive, and I understand that the Gardaí are working with very scarce resources. I'll be putting pressure on our elected representatives here to ensure that the Gardaí are given adequate resources. I'd really like to see more visible police presence, foot patrols in the town, in these areas that are gathering points for these gangs. I think that we've got to get back to more community-based policing where there's a visible presence, and that needs resources.
We heard from several mothers here tonight of victims of this bullying. What advice can you give to them?
I suppose coming back from the meeting was that there's a reluctance on behalf of children and parents to bring cases, and that's a natural reluctance, I suppose. They're intimidated and they're scared. But if you don't challenge a bully, then the bullying behaviour is allowed to continue. So people have to stand up and be counted, but they have to feel that the full weight of the law is behind them and that there will be no repercussions for doing the right thing. So I would say that they should if they are challenged or if they are intimidated, they should report it and they should bring a case, and they make sure that they stand up to the bully. If they don't make a stand, and if they don't and are not willing to bring prosecutions, then this type of behaviour will just continue. So it has to be challenged, and people have to feel like if they do bring a case, that they have the full support and the weight of the law behind them, and that there will be no repercussions for them.
I suppose the idea that was mainly taken on board tonight here was the idea of setting up a campaigning group to promote anti-bullying and things in the town.
Yeah, I think that was one of the key things that came out of the meeting, that there is no forum for parents or kids in this particular situation, and they feel like they're on their own, and that was fairly emphasised strongly, and that led to a discussion about forming some form of a focus group, and I think that that's very welcome. I think that people need to be able to get these things off their chest, and it's never any harm for the Gardaí to realise the full extent. When you have a room full of people, it's certainly more impactful than individual cases. But I think that the idea of a group where there is a focus and there is somebody to turn to and somebody to talk to is something that has to be developed. Now it's early days, but I was very pleased with the response we got. Do
schools need to have a bigger involvement?
Yeah, I think it has to come from the schools. You know, in fairness, we had the principal of one of the major schools here, and I think that, you know, there was a suggestion from Councillor Ken Glynn that the Gardaí need to go back in and start talking to the kids, and I would agree with that. I think to get the information from them, to find out what is the problem, who are they afraid of, why are they afraid of them, where is the trouble spot, what is going on. The only way you're going to get that is to be in the schools where they can probably speak without fear of being intimidated. But I think educationally we have to get this notion that bullying is just simply unacceptable. We cannot allow bullying to continue. It's socially wrong. There's always been bullies, and it's something that we'll never get to stamp out. But we've got to make sure that there's a hostile environment for bullies.
Do you think a lot of this bully behaviour comes from maybe dysfunctional family backgrounds or bad parenting, or why do you think this happens?
It's difficult to know. I suppose you'll find that there's lots of disadvantaged kids, but they're not all bullies. There's lots of very well brought up or very kids from very wealthy backgrounds who are bullies. I don't necessarily think that you could immediately tag somebody with that this is a social issue. Bullies oftentimes are, if you really research them, they're normally kids with problems themselves, and it may not be a social disadvantage type situation. It could be anything. They could have bullying going on in their own family. They could be from a very wealthy background, but there's nearly always a problem in the background that's causing them to be a bully. But the reality is that they make life miserable for an awful lot of other kids. How we deal with it, it's a difficult one, but educationally through the schools, certainly we do need to get into the schools and try and root it out and make sure that there is a forum for kids who are the victims of bullies in particular, that they know that they can contact somebody and there will be no repercussions. And that's hugely important, that kids feel safe to be able to tell, you know, to be able to voice their concerns without fear of intimidation would be a big step forward. I think that we're very lucky and fortunate to have policemen like Alan Murray here, who is proactive and is accessible and is 100% committed to the community, and I think it's vital that we support that. I think there were suggestions from the floor that there needs to be more of a community focus to solve this, and I would agree with that. I think that people are so busy in their lives now, and social media definitely is giving a platform to bullies to maybe bully in a manner that wasn't traditional. And that also needs to be looked at, how we can, you know, try and eradicate this online bullying in particular, which probably leads to more physical bullying on the street, but could be probably equally detrimental, as we've seen with many tragic cases.
Do you think that the people of Mullingar are maybe unaware of the extent of what's going on?
I do, unless it comes to your door. There's no reason to be involved. And absolutely, I think it's only started to become an issue lately. But I think you'll find that the businesses close to the town park would be well aware of it. You know, certain parts of the town are very well aware of it. The children in the schools are hugely aware of it. So it's the wider community that are only starting to become aware of it now.
Superintendent Garda Alan Murray expressed his concerns, but had this message for those too afraid to report antisocial behaviour.
We need statements. We need to encourage them, and parents have to encourage children to make statements. Once we have a statement, we can act on it. Our hands are tied when we don't get statements. When we get the statements, we can then deal with them.